Hey dreamers, welcome back to a new video. Welcome back to a behind the scenes. We haven't done one of those in a while, but with the very special release from last Friday, I thought it's time again. For those of you who have missed it, we actually released an official music video which was in the works for quite some time. We are super proud to have it out there now. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely make sure to check it out. I fully created the environment art and the camera work for this in Dreams, while my mate AVNDR created the lyrics and the visual effects in After Effects, and he did a fantastic job with it. We are so happy with how this turned out and for everyone to see it now. Now, quite a few of you were interested in how I created some of the things and how a collaboration like that actually looks like. So over some connections of mine, they came to me and wanted high quality visuals for their music video, and they gave me the 2D artwork for it, which it should be based on. Obviously it's not quite that easy to create a fully working and detailed 360 3D scene just from the 2D artwork. You can already see in the artwork that we have our heart with a bit of a low poly look surrounded by this transparent box. There are particles floating around. In the background there are bookshelves, a window with stars outside, a clock and the two pillars. So we thought about how we would like to set all of this up during the creation process. I have constantly also been in contact with the guys, sending them screenshots, getting feedback in and so on. We also thought about how we actually come into this room and that there should be a fantasy, almost castle-like looking hallway leading into this. So let's actually jump into the scene where I will now freely take you around and explain my vision, as well as showing you how I created some of the stuff in detail. So here we are with the starting or opening wall. As you can see, it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere of the scene. But we can straight away get into our hallway from here. As you can see, it's very fantasy and castle-like, just how we wanted it, and I mainly created it out of one very detailed wall asset. This is obviously going for very high realism style here. After setting up the basic shape with the bricks and all that stuff, I mainly used the techniques that you can also find in my realistic ground tutorial. And also I lowered actually the sculpture detail texture a little bit. Normally with full detail it would be looking like this, but I thought it actually looks even better if you lower it. So sometimes you should actually go with lower textures and that you might have a better outcome. In the same way I created the whole wall, just cloned it in a very natural and organic way so it doesn't look repetitive. I think I did a pretty good job with that, and also I used the same asset for making these bows, just cloning it in a way like this, which also looks pretty cool I think. For the gate it's the same, but you can see that it's actually used in another direction, which also makes it look very interesting and makes it, you know, a very useful detail. Apart from that, we also created these torches. As you can see, they have a very detailed stone texture with some nails here, and then the flame is also quite detailed. We have one flame here and a little bit of a little and brighter flame within that. Then we have smoke going up and particles as well, which definitely adds a lot to the atmosphere. Also, it wouldn't really be bright enough, so I actually put in a little spotlight here as well, which you can see it would just be like this. Obviously you could make the glow better, but then it would fake the color a little bit, so I added a spotlight to actually create those lights here. As you can see here, I also used a fog, which also adds a lot to the atmosphere. I think makes it look more natural, more mysterious, and yeah, just definitely adds to the atmosphere, just like the particles floating around as well. And that's mainly it to the hallway. Obviously here we also have the reflective ground, which is a decision that we made very early to have the scene fully reflective, as you can see here. But there's a lot more to it, which we will come to in a bit. So for reflecting the whole way, I obviously just reflected the whole thing down. You would copy this and yeah, just reflect it down. This is how you create reflections in dreams, or how we fake it. And I also added a bit of a texture, a flag as a ground here to smooth out the reflections, which you will see more in the main room. So coming to the main room, we thought about how we can, put the 2D artwork into a 3D scene in the best way. So I kind of made a square out of it using the pillars in the corners and in the beginning here. This gate actually was a decision that I made quite late to the scene, but I think it is a nice addition, especially when you come from this way, because it looks kind of unfinished like this, and this definitely adds up a lot to it, I think. Even though from this direction it also looks quite cool without the gate. But yeah, I think it's an improvement. Also, you can see in the background I used this, which was mainly the asset that I created for the universe ceiling, just to round it up, because without this it would just be looking kind of empty. And while probably no one even focuses on this, but the camera sometimes is around this angle, right? And I thought it looks cooler if someone focused on that point, that there actually is something there as well. And I think that's a pretty cool view that we have here as well. But yeah, now coming to the main room again. For this I actually used a very extended reflection. So the main problem is that I created those bookshelves here, which are very detailed, lots of books featuring, right? And so much detail and so many single elements are pretty much killing the gameplay turmo. So we weren't able to fully reflect everything down. So looking at real life reflections, some of them also don't reflect all the way down, but you see maybe like 1 meter down reflection, and that's what I try to achieve then. So the main floor is one single flag. You can achieve that when you do impasto on -100. So this is really just like one huge flag, which is completely flat. The advantage of using one flag in text instead of a text displayer is that you can add finish to it. You can add shininess or roughness to it. You can add metalness to it, and it also looks quite a bit different with the opacity in general. So what I did here is using that one mainly with quite a high opacity. So if it would be 100%, obviously you wouldn't see below it, but so you can see down the reflections. And then to smooth it out, I used the same flag again on a middle way with a very low opacity. Here we have a 50% opacity, so it kind of smooths it out. And then a bit lower we have a full opacity, or 95%. So because if it would be low like this, you would kind of see that it just ends. But like that, we smooth it all out, we add almost a realistic reflection to it, and as you can see here, those are all just, reflected one down, and after that there pretty much comes not too much anymore. So that is how I did the reflections. On top of that, I added a very detailed 3D floor that is just strings mainly, with a little bit of that, like a little bit, a cube to align them and connect them as well. And then we have it perfectly aligned with the flag here. So that is it for the reflective ground in general. Some of you were asking about that, and if it's actually a real reflection or if it's just really mirrored down. And yeah, for the bookshelves, I created one very detailed asset from scratch here. You can see how it has a very detailed and high quality wood texture as well, quite a detailed shape in general. Wanted to make it really cool and a bit ancient as well. And those are easily lined up together, and yeah, you can just stack them. So, and I also try to make the books look natural in how they're standing in here. You can see how I made lots of different book designs, but it's actually not that many books, not that many different books, because in some I just changed up the color. So mainly it's like three different book designs, I think. But switching up with so many different colors and designs and saturations and all that stuff, and you know, putting them in that way, leaning onto each other, I think it all looks quite natural, and also you barely see it repeating if you don't really completely focus on it. Obviously it's quite hard because I would need to sort every single one on its own, but yeah. So that was mainly how we wanted the walls to be featured by those bookshelves, also having it almost, you know, quite high, surrounded everywhere, but it was obviously quite hard to just put them everywhere without having anything. So we still had that window, obviously, we still had the entrance here, so I thought about ways of how I can actually do it, also with the limited resources I had. So if I would copy one more bookshelf, it would go to 97%, so we're pretty much on the limit with those bookshelves, and I think the solution I found is pretty cool. Especially because I made that detailed window for the wall. Also features very high quality wood texture again. I've shown you guys how you can create a wood texture in previous videos quite a bit. Also made these strings for the windows. The window itself is another flag that we used here, which is a very nice addition, I think. Makes it look quite detailed and natural. And there I also used my clock. This is the only asset that I used from which I had before. I think it fits pretty well into the scene, and since I already made such a detailed quality clock, I was like, why not using that? Since the scene also featured a clock. And this is actually quite funny because here you can see this is just a cut out part from the original asset, and I used it in a way to create a small window here as well, and just to, you know, finish off this wall in a nice way. I think it all fits together pretty well. Here we also have an interesting kind of, you know, cut between those bookshelves that I used here, which I think all looks pretty good together, like pretty natural, pretty organic in a way. And on the other side I also used these again, and a bit of a different piece, or just in a different way as well. Here I just cut out the ground pieces so they all fit together quite well. And here we have one interesting kind of bookshelf on the top of this gate, which also looks interesting, I think. Here we have again these walls, which in this color and with the lighting also make the whole scene look, I don't know, it gives it a little bit, you know, of this realistic touch, and just shows you that there's actually a wall behind it as well, which is a nice little detail, I think, as well. And then we also obviously have those pillars, which are created mainly in a gold and white shape, which looks, in my opinion, very almost rich. I actually made just two sides of that, which is quite interesting, because with those pillars, and you obviously only see two sides, as you see, like when they're in the corners you just see two sides, and here they're actually cloned within each other, because it was quite the work. I needed to, you know, get these shapes that I cut it with and put it on the pretty much same spot on the other side again to make it look all the same. And yeah, now let's come to the heart. The heart is actually, oh my god, that was the most difficult sculpt, one of the most difficult sculpts that I've ever done. very hard. So I tried to reach the whole low poly style here. The whole shape of a realistic heart is just so complex, so it's just not easy. It's not an easy task to do. This took a while, and it's still not perfect, but I think the shape is actually quite nice now. Here you can also see I used a bit of metallic on it, which also makes it look quite interesting, a bit of shiny, even though putting roughness on it also makes it look very interesting. But I thought, fitting to the scene and the style, I thought making it, you know, shiny looks actually quite cool. And now you see how it's beating and all that stuff. And how did I do that? I mainly made just one timeline, and then we have the first keyframe, and in the second keyframe I pretty much just scaled it up, put the glow up, and you know, just made some changes to it. And then you can see how when we let it play, it just repeats those two keyframes all over again in a different way. And the cool thing is, the beating of the heart also, it just beats to the beat of the song, which is so cool for actually syncing, you know, the visuals with the song as well. And for the rest of it, you can already see the box is made with text displayers, which probably a lot of you already guessed. This would not look as good with, you know, just paint with flags, because the flags don't have completely clean edges and you would see a bit of noise in it, just like with the ground. And then the rest is, I guess, lighting. Here I also used some fog for the room, which is a nice little detail to the atmosphere thing. We have one fog for the floor, and to just like rounding the whole room a little bit up, giving it this atmospheric, mysterious atmosphere here. And I also, which is quite important, highlighted the room a lot with spotlights. Otherwise, it would have been quite dark. We also have spotlights directing completely to the heart. Without them, the heart would look quite dark and not shiny at all. So this is actually quite important. Those two spotlights are very important because they also give a bit of the perfect reflection to the ground that we need. And I also highlighted the actual reflections, because otherwise it would have also been quite dark, and I just tried to highlight everything in the perfect way. On top of the window here, we also have these torches again, which is also a nice little addition, I think. Now, this also, obviously the gradient effect also is always very important. As you can see, it definitely adds so much to it. And the sky as well. The sky is completely dark, obviously. And yeah. Now, I guess the last thing here, if I didn't miss anything, is the ceiling, the universe ceiling. So how did I do that? Let's put the spotlight on for this one. So what we have here, you can see it. I made a shape like this to draw on it, and what it is here is I pretty much drew all over this with surface snap activated, added some particles, and it also features a bit of smoke, fog, and features, you know, high impasto animated settings here. You can see how it's all animated with these, and features quite high looseness, impasto, the splash flag. And here you can also see how I use the same thing pretty much to put the stars outside of the window and the universe. And this natural, like, rounded shape definitely adds up to it, which makes it look all even cooler. And yeah, from the outside this scene looks so messy, but this is the thing, you always need to focus on the camera point, camera view, and from that at least it looks pretty cool, I think. Oh yeah, and I also almost forgot about that, added this light here for the ceiling with a light image here, which is definitely pretty cool. Could also use other ones, they all look very interesting. I just love spotlights and their images, so cool. So many cool things to do with that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this scene, I think. I think I've shown you most things now and how this actually worked. After all, I think it's a very cool and interesting scene. I loved doing the task and, you know, the challenge, and the boys were also insanely happy with the visuals. Oh yeah, about the camera work, almost forgot about the camera work. So we have a camera here. For the camera, you can straight away see once I switch into the camera, the view changes a little bit. The whole room looks bigger and, you know, wider. This is because I put a natural field of view into the camera, and a little bit of a focus as well. And yeah, this just definitely adds up to it, I think. I also added some visual effects to it. Let's see. Yeah, here you can see this is right before we come into this room. The camera is standing here, and in the next view it turns, you know, back again. This is how I added a little bit to the visual effects using Dreams as well. This is mainly for the drop. Here you can also see the camera path. As you can see, we start off from here. This is the first keyframe point, and then, you know, those are all the keyframe points. It looks like a roller coaster almost, and that's kind of what it is. And then you need to look that it's actually smoothed out and all that stuff. It's not an easy task. Takes a while, and if you want to know how to make smooth camera paths, I actually made a tutorial for camera shots, cutscenes, and how to use a camera in general. It's one of my best tutorials. I will link it for you at the top so you can check that out as well. But yeah, as you can see, bunch of work here. The main focus of the camera path was having the heart in the middle, obviously, and I actually specifically turned the camera away from the heart when there was no singing in the song, just to add a little bit of detail to it. And while doing all of this, I also had to sync the camera to the actual song, and I couldn't import it in Dream. So what I did is, like, literally I would have the song on my PC, I would start my dolly shot on my PlayStation, and I try to play it at the same time. And I probably played it thousands of times. Yeah, a bunch of work. But I think the outcome is pretty damn cool. And yeah, I think that's it for this behind the scenes. Came out quite long, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool for you guys to have a look behind the scenes, to hear about my vision and how I created some of the things. Hopefully some of you were also able to learn a little bit from it. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, some feedback, and share it with others. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring that bell to not miss out on future videos like inspiring art, helpful tutorials, and amazing community highlights. I will see you in the next video.